Okay, so I'm gonna make this quick video just to explain a few things, mostly nuance, because I'm giving a talk about criminal justice and I feel like there's just some context that needs to be laid so that more people are on the same page. So let's start out. Like, criminal justice is really important because it's about the law, like what the law actually says, and then like how the law is applied, like in reality. I feel like so many people are reading textbooks, like reading theory, and saying like the law says this, like Brown versus Board of Education happened, then everything changed. That's not how it works. Like, we have the law in the way that it should work, and then we have reality. Like, we literally are living in a segregated society, and most of you have gone to segregated schools. You have like Black and Latino communities, and you have white and Asian communities, and people don't cross those lines. So when you're thinking about creating a workplace where people work together, how are you possibly expecting people who have never interacted with one another all through from K through 12? Like, they've never crossed paths, they don't have any friends from the other side, like they don't know how to interact with each other. So unless the solution is literally have a workplace that is as segregated as society, somebody's going to have some communication. Like, the things that are happening in like Black America and Latino America are very different than the things happening in Asian America and white America. Like, they're not the same. And it's very strange, like growing up in the Bay Area, like we actually went to integrated schools. There was everyone. Like, there were people from India there, and there were people from Nigeria there. So you have just really everyone, like from all over the globe, was there. But clearly that is not everyone's experience. That includes African Americans, and African American history is American history. Like, if you have never taken an African American studies class, you don't know like the struggle for civil rights that have actually given everyone rights, specifically if you are not a white person, civil rights that were fought and died for by Black Americans. Those are the reasons that you are able to enter any public space. Like, public spaces were not accessible to us, like at all. Like, you cannot go into restaurants, like schools, libraries, public transit, airplanes. Get the fuck out of here. Like, traveling internationally, citizenship, owning things. Like, remember, like, Black Americans were slaves. Like, they were the property. They were the resource. Like, that's what built the wealth for like many white Americans that are still to this day living off that wealth. It's an unearned benefit. But this is like really public knowledge. Like, it's like American History 101. And when you're talking about the criminal justice system and people are talking about the school to prison pipeline, they're talking about little Black children and now little Latino children who are born, and they go to schools and they don't learn anything except for how to go to jail, how to prepare to go to prison, and there's a prison culture. Living in societies or communities that are devoid of resources, it just cultivates criminal activity. It's not that like the people themselves are criminal, like their humanity is somehow genetically criminal, but it's like the environment is like really bad. Like, what if you can't get a job simply because you're Black? Like, Stevie Wonder literally wrote a song about it and he couldn't even see. Like, he it was so prevalent that he wrote a very like rich sensory song, like Living for the City, that was literally about that. I mean, listen to what he's saying in the song. He's describing to you the state of Black America. And television shows at the time, like The Cosby Show, completely like explained that narrative from one family who was like a super upper middle class. But that was one family. That's not the image of most Black Americans. Like, that is like the 1% of Black Americans, not most people. It's very, very interesting. I know my family initially grew up in, my mom grew up in Chicago, in like a very, very crappy neighborhood in Chicago. And my mom's stepfather was like murdered at gunpoint, just shot dead in front of her. and then my family had to move to California. Like, that's literally the reason that my family came to California. And my mom's stepfather was he was like a postal worker, but there's gang violence in that community. And each day he would try to go to work, and the members of the gang would like antagonize him and like wonder like, oh, he must think he's too good because he like, doesn't want to be a part of the gang. And just one day, like one guy he like busts open the door and like in front of my mom just like shoots him in the head. And like two of my mom's sisters were there and saw it. Like my grandma still remembers it. It's like literally the history of how my family came to California, right? Because that like honestly, I think my grandma knew that if she stayed in Chicago, like our whole family would have been murdered there, because Chirac is real. Like some of you guys think you understand violence maybe from like third world countries or politics, but Chicago violence is like a whole another level. And this is not like some fantasy story. This is the story that my mom, like my mom's still around. Like we talk about it. She was like 14 at the time and literally saw her stepdad murdered cold blood in front of her. Like the blood was splattered on her face, real time. Like that's not a joke. And gang violence is real. And it takes out a lot of people. Even growing up in Berkeley, like there's gangs there too. Like South Berkeley wasn't always pretty. Like people get jacked. There's real gangs. It's not all fun. If you're a person of color, there's like a whole counterculture around that really happens, and like some people are aware of it. Like I have literal family members like who are in prison, like on death row. Like it's not how can it, like it's there's a lot, and there's a reason and a culture and a society that perpetuates that violence and does nothing to try to fix the reasons why people are behaving in these ways. It's like society is just okay with it, but like your children are also growing up in this society that enables other people to live like this. And you can pretend like you don't see it, but it exists. Like there's data there to show that. And if you are not a part of the solution, you are a part of the problem. And you just know that in history, like I'm very passionate about recording this time in history and all the passive people who knew and didn't care. Like I can't wait to like blast your face on these posters for your children and your grandchildren to see. You knew and you did nothing. Because being passive in the face of someone else's oppression is not passivity at all. You're an active participant in oppression, and you might not care, but maybe your children will. And if you consider yourself ethical and moral, I think that you should care, because it's affecting a lot of people, and it's unfair, and you should do something about it.